Okay. Looks like we are live. Jeremy, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty good. How about
Uh,
yourself, Paul?
I am doing fantastic. It's good to see you. Thanks everybody for joining the stream tonight. This is the other side of the die, where we discuss how you can have less drama and more fun at your gaming table. You can reach us on Twitter at other side die, or if you're old school like me, the old Gen Xer, you can send us an email at othersidedie@gmail.com. We do stream every other Sunday starting at 8 p.m. Eastern US time, and we're going to go until we run out of things to talk about. And I am one of your hosts, as you can see my name on the screen. My name is Paul Postal.
I'm Jeremy Kimberly. So this week we're going to be talking about how to not be a jerk DM. We're going to discuss a whole bunch of pros and cons. I think this week it's mostly just cons. I don't know if there's any pros to doing it. We do have a rough list of topics that we're going to delve into while we're discussing stuff. If anybody has any ideas or stories, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll try to touch base on them as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Jeremy, on your side, I just want to double check some technical stuff here. So, I'm showing on Twitch the stream is going. Are you
Yep,
looking on your side? Does it seem like it's going on your side?
yep, I see everything going.
Awesome. Just wanted to double check, so I appreciate it. So, yeah, I think, Jeremy, we were prepping for this stream. One of the first things we talked about was GMs who will not allow players to have flying races. And I don't know about you, I'm okay with this. What is your mindset on whether allow flying races?
Yeah, so I don't like them. I will heavily advise not for them to be played. And I think it's a lot more people tend to not think about consequences
Hmm.
of their of decisions versus me just not liking them. I think it does break a lot of early encounters, which is why a newer DM is going to struggle a lot with flying races and why they may just straight up ban them.
Hmm.
But I think at the end of the day, as long as I think as a DM, if you're like, hey, these are the races that I do allow, there's some that I don't. Please stick to these that I like or that are in my world. I do find that as an okay thing, but a lot of DMs do want to ban out those flyings.
Yeah. And and I really don't have a problem with flying races, um, for the most part, because if you're in a dungeon and you're playing a flying race, you're not going to get very far anyway, unless you get into some big room like some kind of arena or some big cavern or something like that. I think when you and I were prepping, and like you had just said, that one of the things about flying races is, if they go up and they get knocked unconscious, or they get hit or whatever, or otherwise incapacitated, I mean, they're probably going to die depending on how far up they are.
Yeah,
And where I'm on my side, and you tell me if this makes me a jerk GM, but you know what? That's a risk you're going to take playing a flying race.
yeah, and there's so many, and I feel like they don't think about how many ways there are to just get knocked out of the air early level.
Right.
And I feel like that's what I've always ran into is I feel like as a DM, I've had to pull punches really hard in order to make sure uh basically I don't accidentally kill the PC just for their race being able to fly. Uh yeah, and I think with flying creatures, it breaks a lot of encounters. I get kind of going back into to
Hmm.
for DMs. I think it breaks a lot of encounters that a DM wants to make difficult. And so what they do is instead of being able to rearrange their encounters to basically know that that is something that's going to happen,
Hmm.
uh novice DMs will just basically panic and not know what to do or
Right.
how to change the encounter to make it still an encounter. So And I think a lot of this goes back to, knowing the settings that you're going to be playing in and kind of the
Mhm.
DM. Because, like in your story, if we are going to be playing a Darkest Dungeon type campaign where we're going to be grinding through dungeons a whole lot, I wouldn't want to play a character that could fly because I can't use it.
Right. Right.
And we had kind of talked about a little bit while we were prepping for this. Uh, I think as a DM, if you have a character that is picking these kinds of races that have these really unique capabilities, I think if you're not designing encounters every once in a while specifically around that aspect, I think you're missing a really good opportunity to let a character shine really well, based off of decisions that they made.
Okay. Um, I'm thinking about that one. Okay. Walk me through again what you were saying about the you're not giving your character a chance to shine. What did you mean exactly by that?
So it and I think this goes beyond just the your races and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I've been in games where a character will have a specific kind of build or something that makes their character really unique. And as a DM, it is kind of your job to every once in a while have encounters that let that PC basically just absolutely smash the encounter with whatever decisions they've been making, beats they've been taking,
Hmm.
specific class options that they've been doing. Like you want to give the players, and you shouldn't like every encounter shouldn't just be a smash, but every once in a while, having an encounter that is really easy that lets a specific character just absolutely shine, I think is a really can be a really good moment and really fun experience at the table.
Okay. So how would you do that for flying characters specifically?
I mean, the same thing that makes it really annoying for a novice DM,
Hmm.
you could obviously do and let the character shine. Uh, all of a sudden somebody comes up and asks your group for help because they need to rescue somebody up in the tower. Well, you guys don't have to climb the tower. Just the guy flies up there, secures a rope. Everybody can climb up. Uh, and obviously you could still make the climb, make climbing checks, maybe at advantage or bonuses and stuff like that.
Right.
But obviously it's significantly easier because of a flying creature.
Well, it is, but I mean, to your point, that you just said, that just because a flying creature takes, like the one to climb a tower, and a flying creature, takes or PC takes the rope up to the top of the tower and ties it off. Well, the rest of the characters still have to get up to the top of that tower. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're right. You can still make some. You can make them do some skill checks. You can make them do some ability checks. Relevant to whatever game system that you're actually playing. Um, for one of the advantages I think of playing a flying character is when I was running Tomb of Annihilation. They're out in the middle of a jungle. They don't have a map to guide their way. They have a partial map they start off with, and my player Ben, who was playing the flying character, he's playing an Aarakocra because it's a D&D campaign. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he flew up and he had a magical device. I can't remember exactly what it's called. It's in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but it basically these were spectacles. It basically he could see like maybe 10 miles away, perfectly. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was awesome for them because he got to fly up and he got to scout out, the area and see around. And I was describing to him, it's like, okay, you see these, mountains here, you see this volcano here, you see this big giant gap in the trees in the forest, and of course I pointed out things of interest for them, which I use that as a way to kind of point out different ways that they could actually go, if they wanted to. But getting back to your point about flying creatures, yes, can be a nightmare for novice DMs if you don't know how to specifically, how do you adjudicate, you know, if a flying character is getting hit? How do you determine exactly how far away they are? I mean, I can see those things being a little difficult for novice DMs.
Yeah. And again, I think that this question is going to be a lot harder for somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience DMing,
Hmm.
just because if especially if you're running modules and stuff like that, it's like,
Hmm.
hey, this is supposed to be a hard combat, or this is supposed to be a hard encounter, and yet it's really easy because one character can just fly up here and then just rain arrows down, and they can't ever get attacked
Hmm.
due to enemy composition and stuff like that. And newer DMs just won't know how to. All right, well, I'm going to change. I'm going to add harpies into the cliffside to make the climb harder, or
Right.
I'm going to give this creature this crazy ability that lets them shoot something, because if not, they just could never reach the target. Uh, so yeah, I think that would be a good way to just. And I think a lot of this is you as a player. Not This doesn't have to be with how to be a jerk DM, but as a player, if the DM is giving you guidelines on races, I've had my players do this, and it's always really frustrating. I'll
Hmm.
been like, these are my countries, and these are the races inside of the countries, and they'll come back and they're like, well, what about playing a Minotaur? Well, fantastic. That wasn't one of the races I told you to play. So if I give
That's
you a hefty
frustrating.
list, yeah,
That's
if
so
I give you a
frustrating.
list of 15, or I think if a DM can give you 15 races for you to play as, if you ask for one outside of that, you're kind of being a jerk player.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Now, that brings up another topic here that actually wasn't on our list, but you just brought this up because I've seen this on social media. Players getting upset because their DMs or GMs, to try to be more generic, will restrict what races and what classes are actually in the game. Now,
Yeah,
I've seen it usually on social media, it's divided into two different camps. It's divided into the DM is creating the world, especially if it's a homebrew world. They have say over what races and what classes are allowed, in their world. And then there's the other camp that says, but wait a minute, the DM's number one responsibility is to make sure that all of his players, his or her players, are having fun and allowing whatever race or class combo they want to play is letting your players have fun, and that's what the DM should be doing. I'm in the
so
well, let me say this. I'm in the camp of now if I'm creating a homebrew world, it needs to fit my narrative. So there are some races I'm not going to allow simply
yeah,
because it doesn't fit the narrative. So what are your thoughts on that?
so and I'll bring this up a lot. I feel like a lot of groups forget that the DM is a player.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, if we're going to make a decision because it needs to be fun for everybody at the table, what do you do in a situation where, as the DM, that's really not fun for me to have to be completely wide open?
Right.
But for you, you feel like I have to be. So now we're at a confrontation of it's not fun for one of us. Uh, I'm gonna default to the DM.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I hardly ever get to play. I'm always been a
Yeah.
forever DM. But I would have no problem if a DM said, well, this is a homebrew world. This is the narrative for my world, and this race does not exist. Okay, I'm going to abide by the DM, and I'm going to say, okay, you're coming up with this for a reason, and that's why you're not allowing these races or these classes. I am perfectly fine with that.
Something that I've done a couple times, when I have one specific player in particular that he's always wanting to, like, he always comes and he's like, I want to play as just crazy races. Just every time he's like,
Mm-hmm.
I found in the new Unearthed Arcana, there's this new race, and I'm like, fantastic. I know it's balanced.
Not
And he's like, well, this is what I want to play as, and I'm like, that's fine. Obviously, I don't have any lore or anything built for this crazy race that just came out.
right.
So send me the document about the lore for them, and
Yep.
I will make the player that wants to play as it come up with the lore and put it into my world. And I have to okay the lore. So they do have to work with me, but it's
Right.
predominantly them. If you want that race in there, you got to figure out how to put it in a way that I feel like doesn't break my world.
Yeah.
Uh, and I've had my player a couple times say, I don't think I can do that for this race. I'm just going to pick a different one. Well, fantastic. That's what I wanted.
Right. Absolutely. And the other thing I was going to say is you mentioned about Unearth Arcana, for D&D campaigns. Um, I would probably be if I had a player that was really insistent on something from Unearthed Arcana, and if we could make it fit into the lore, okay, then I would say, okay, let's do it. With the caveat, I reserve the right to tweak this as we go along if I find something unbalanced. I've had
Yep.
players bring me things from D&D Wiki, the
Yeah.
website, and I've said absolutely not because I am not going to jump through hoops trying to balance this because I'm sure you've looked at D&D Wiki and those things are hugely, those classes are in races they put on their homebrew are hugely OP and broken.
One of my favorite things I've done, and this may make me a jerk DM, so maybe.
That's
I've
okay.
had it.
I'll tell you how not to be a jerk DM. So
Yeah, yeah. So there was one time one of my characters he brought me this just absolutely broken class, and I was much younger at this time, and I was like, sure, that's fine, you can play that. You guys are gonna have to fight a party of them though. And he's
ah,
like, well, he's like, I don't know if we should do that. And I'm like, well, I mean, you should be able to fight a party of fighters or rangers or
right.
druids. So yeah, let's put a party of 5 of them up against your party. And I ended up doing that, and it wiped the party with them
Wow.
just because the class was really broken, and he knew that. Uh, so yeah, now I always kind of threaten whenever they start playing OP stuff. I'm like, well, I'm probably going to bring this in. Like, if you guys get this, I'm probably going to make an enemy have the same exact thing just to fight you guys.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I don't think that makes you a jerk DM. I think that makes you a DM who's trying to preserve the sanctity of his campaign and trying to preserve your sanity. So, yeah, not a problem. Looking at the next topic on our list, though, we were talking about using DMPCs. And for those who don't know, Dungeon Master player characters, and I am with you on this one
Yeah.
because I have never seen this turn out well. And I will tell you
Uh,
my experience whenever I've tried running DMPCs, just because, and I know why DMs do this. It was the same reason I
yeah.
wanted to do it because I wanted to play,
Yep.
and that's why DMs do it. But it was difficult for me to keep track of this player character while keeping track of the campaign and everything that was going on, try to adjudicate all of these mechanics, and add on top of that the burden of trying not to metagame. Because I also think a lot of DMs are like, hey, I'm going to play this character because this is how I'm going to feed information to my
Yep.
party.
Yeah.
Now, what are you? Because you were shaking your head.
It
So, what's your experience been with them?
I've done it as well, especially when I was younger. I mean, I started playing at like 11.
Right?
Uh and I did it a couple times while growing up. I don't think I've done it in the last decade or more.
Yep.
Uh, it just doesn't work. The only time I feel like it may be acceptable is if it was like you and like if you were doing a one-on-one campaign, and even then, I would still never do it. The only time I think it may be acceptable is if you're doing a one-on-one campaign and you just need another body that needs to be there, but you
Mm-hmm.
need to design that piece that DMPC to not be a source of information. The one time I did it, it was a druid that had his tongue cut off. So he just didn't communicate almost at all.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
the PC that was playing was a ranger, and they could just communicate just because they had traveled together for so long. But yeah, it was basically like, this PC is here to help heal you and to help soak up in fights, but don't expect them to like interact uh
Right.
charismatic situations with NPCs. Like, that's not what this is for. This is to help combat only.
Yep.
Uh
Agreed.
yeah. So, but for the most part, if you do it and it's at like a table, so you got like 4, 5, 6 players and there's a DMPC, it's don't do that. You're gonna
No.
give yourself extra items. You may not attack yourself, especially when you're low HP and stuff like that, and you know that
Mm-hmm.
your PC is in danger. Just don't,
Yeah,
just don't.
and the examples I've seen on social media, horror stories from players. where their DMs have used DMPCs. Usually it's because that DM or GM has a it's me versus the players mentality,
Yeah.
and they end up making they play favorites with their DMPC. And to your point, they end up giving their DMPC all these extra feats, all these extra items, all these extra things. And I remember reading one story that I told you about when we were prepping for this stream. And this guy was like, okay, the campaign is going to start off with the player characters all captured and they've been stripped of all of their weapons. And then I'm going to have my player character, this Dragonborn. He's going to be the one to come in and he's going to kill all the jailers and he's going to rescue them. And then after he rescues them, he's just going to beat the crap out of them, to kind of teach them a lesson about how, powerful he is. And this guy was like, I'm going to make him like 4 or 5 levels above the rest of the player characters. And he was doing it just to establish, his reasoning was to establish, his authority and dominance, over the players. And all of us were like, dude, don't do this because you're going to drive off all your players is what's going to happen.
To me, nothing screams narcissist more than a DMPC.
Yeah. Yep. I can agree with that. Or just desperation, like I said, because you're a forever DM and you want to play. And, my answer to that one is because my wife asked me one time, she's like, don't you ever want to play like as a player? And I was like, yeah, that'd be nice, but there's nobody else to do it. And then she asked me, she's like, because don't you want to play a character of your own? And I was like, honey, I get to play a whole bunch of different characters.
Yeah.
If you enjoy role playing, then you should not be worried about playing one player character because you get to role play a ton of different, characters. And so that is the answer to wanting to play, a DMPC. Just think about, but you get to play all these different characters. And there's nothing wrong with having an NPC become, a member of the party for a while.
Yeah.
And
I think doing that, I was going to say, I think doing that is really, really fun. Having the NPCs move in and out of the party, I think adds a whole lot to the game. It is really fun. But and the table can tell. Here's the difference. The table can tell. So some of you watching this may or may not go, I don't have a DMPC in the game. Your table's going to know if you have a DMPC at the game, which is very different than an NPC working with the party.
Yep, absolutely. And especially, I had a player tell me one time that they loved it when an NPC would come in and out of the party. Like they would meet up with this NPC, especially if it was a favorite NPC. They could meet up with them from time to time because like their goals and their missions happen to align, right then. And so having the NPC go along with them and coming in and coming out of the party, they loved it. The one time I actually did that.
My group, the favorite, this is a little off topic, but the favorite NPC that my party once had. And have you ever had the party that adopts the goblin?
I did it one time when I took a group through Lost Mine of Fendover. Yes.
So this group, they ended up adopting, quote unquote, adopting a goblin.
Yep.
And they put him, like, they owned a tavern and they put him in the cellar and like kept him in there for a little while. And then they got a second goblin and they gave each one of the goblins a glove. So they called them Lefty and Righty because they didn't know the goblins' names because they're terrible individuals adopting goblins. And then they put an orc down there and the orc had a hat. And then they came back after their next mission and the orc had the hat and both gloves and the goblins had nothing. And they were just like hiding in the corner because the orc was like, I'm bigger than you guys. And
that's kind of a wimpy orc if all he's concerned about is getting the gloves to wear with the hat.
He didn't like that the goblins had stuff that he didn't have.
Okay.
He wasn't getting out. But
because that's not where I thought you were going to go. I thought you were going to say that they came back and like the goblins, he'd like, eaten the goblins. and now he's
Oh,
wearing
yeah.
like the gloves, and the hat. So,
No, they did
oh,
keep feeding. They were feeding their enemies too, though. That little group. That was an interesting campaign.
was it like having like the Rancor monster from Return of the Jedi? They just kept him down in the cellar and just kept feeding
Yeah,
him.
that I mean, they said they were good characters, but I would beg to differ.
Oh, that's funny. That's hilarious. All right, let's talk about using heavily scripted encounters because I think every novice GM has done this.
Oh yeah.
I've done it. All it does is frustrate the hell out of your players because they're banging their head against the wall, trying to land on the one solution
Yeah.
that you are saying is the only way out of this situation.
Yeah. And I mean, I know when I was young, I definitely did this. I mean, I was DMing again, 10,
Mm-hmm.
11, 12. So I know without a doubt when I was 12, I did that multiple times where I'm like, this
Mm-hmm.
is the way they have to sneak through here or they're gonna die. Don't do that. A lot of times you want to figure out what the problem is and then let the party figure out how to fix the problem.
Yep.
You don't want to be the one who has the solution to fix it. You just need to let them figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Last week we were talking about how the game isn't a video game, and
Mm-hmm.
this kind of ties in really really well. If I'm a player and it's a thin wall and I can't open the lock, I want to just chop the door down if I have an axe.
Right.
If you're telling me that I cannot do that just because the game says I can't, I'm not going to understand that. Why would if you have a big strong character and it's a wooden door, let them see if they can break the door down.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially if you've got like a fighter or a barbarian with an axe and it's a wooden door. Yes, I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
given a sufficient amount of time, they're going to be able to break through that door. Now, they're probably going to alert,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
anybody else or anything else inside that dungeon or cave or wherever they happen to be. But yes, I agree with you. There shouldn't be any reason they should not be able to break down that door. You were telling me a story when we were prepping about you had a riddle that
Yes.
had a
Yeah.
solution to it. Go ahead and tell that story because I like this
Yeah.
one.
So I had the, famed Sphinx riddle. So they have to solve the riddle to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And I came up with this riddle, and the players are beating their heads trying to figure out the answer. And then they came out and they said, "This is the answer." And they told it to me, and I did something I almost never do. And I said, in the middle of this high intense situation, like think about building this up. Like they've been discussing what they want to do, like far away from the Sphinx, and then they come up and they're like, "This is our answer." And I go, "I need a break, guys. Everybody go to the bathroom, get some water. I need a second."
Mm-hmm.
And the whole reason is because I needed to think about this because the answer they gave me answered the riddle. It just wasn't the answer that I had.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up accepting their answer because
Mm-hmm.
my riddle was bad and it had multiple answers. Uh, so as much as I would say you don't want to break tension up and stuff like that, if you're a DM and you need a moment just because you're rattled and you need to figure
Yep.
out what what is what, do it. Do it. Players are not going to be upset. And of course, I told them afterwards. I was like, "Hey guys, sorry, I needed a moment. That wasn't the answer that I had. This is actually the answer that I had for the riddle, but you guys came up with a different answer, and I just needed a couple minutes
Mm-hmm.
to figure out what to do."
Now, see, I would think, see, my advice on that's going to be a little bit different because it depends on. Well, I want to say at first I was going to say it depends on like how important it is for them to get past this riddle, whether it's of consequence or not. However, my thing would be if on the surface it seems like that's the answer, just go ahead, just let them go on through. Just give the success to them. Is it really that big of a deal that
Yeah.
they had a different answer than what you did. It's the same thing as you're trying to run a mystery and you're making your players roll the dice to spot a clue.
Yeah.
And if you have a character with a high perception, I don't care if you're playing D&D, you're playing Call of Cthulhu, Pathfinder, whatever you're playing. I just don't like the idea of making them roll to find clues, especially if you're doing a mystery, because most of the bulk of the time in a mystery is them putting the clues together, trying to
Yes.
fit the clues together. And if you can just mitigate them having that tedium of having to search for the clues, just they go into a room, tell the character with the highest perception, give them a private note. If you're playing in person, give them a note, tell them in private. If you're on a VTT, send a private message to them, but just give it to them. Because like I said, the bulk of their time is going to be trying to fit the clues together.
So I think that's going to fall into sometimes players will ask to roll something in a scenario where they don't need to roll.
Mm-hmm.
So I know multiple times where I will probably just give you the information because it advances the story and that's what I want to do.
Right.
But there's been times where players walk into the room, I want to roll a perception. All right, you rolled a 3. So something I was going to just give you, you walked into the room and said, this is what I want to do. Let me
Right.
roll it. So yeah, now all of a sudden you have to roll, you failed. And now as a DM, I have to put it in the next room.
Yep.
And DMs, I would say if you ever have an idea of like my players have to find this, don't do that. You need to have multiple ways to get a piece of information to the players because players are they're the players. They do crazy things and sometimes avenues that you think are open get closed really quickly.
Absolutely. Now, let me put a caveat on what I was saying because while you were talking there, I made it seem like they can just walk into a room and instantly see a clue. And that's not what I'm saying. If you have a clue that is in the false bottom of drawer in a desk, or taped under, I don't know, they have to slide the desk out and the desk drawer out and it's taped under the desk drawer, or they got to pull a stone out of a wall. If they're telling you that's what they're doing and the clue is there and they're doing what they need to do to find it, don't hide it behind a roll is what I'm saying. Go ahead and just give them the clue. Go ahead.
I think as a DM, if a player describes like, hey, this is what I think is going on, sometimes just rewarding them with, you got me. That's exactly what's going on. Here's what you got. And without that roll, sometimes that can give a really good feeling for the players. Like, oh, I didn't even have to roll. A lot of times with charismatic checks and stuff like that, they describe something so well to somebody else, just the situation. That you just give it to them because they're like, hey, that was amazing. Great job.
I mean, it's the same thing as like with a persuasion roll.
Yeah.
If the player themselves make a great argument, especially if they role play it well, I'm not going to make them roll. Now, I have seen online, I know I reference social media a lot because I've actually had really good players in my games. Thankfully, I don't really have any horror stories. But I've seen online where players have actually gotten mad because the GM was just going to give them something. Like, no, I want to roll for it because they like rolling dice so much. Yeah. They're like, I want to roll for it. And I'm, okay, I'd rather have the guarantee. But if you want to roll for it, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Reaper, kind of what you're saying. I do like doing stuff like that where you give them a lot of really obvious clues. You walk into a room and there's a bunch of obvious little hints, but it does take the players to add it all together, or all the minor clues throughout an area to actually mix it into the information that's useful.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat. I'm glad I didn't see we had chat messages, so I'm glad you said something. Yeah, Reaper, minor clues that can cue together large. Oh, I love that. I never actually thought about that. That is a fantastic idea.
Bunch of smaller stuff going into one.
Man, that is brilliant because here I am talking about, just putting clues together to solve the mystery. But what Reaper's talking about is, okay, this is a bunch of little clues that add up to a bigger clue. So you got to put these smaller clues together that make a bigger clue. I'm trying to think where you would actually like putting like finding pieces of a picture or a puzzle or something like that.
I mean, I could think of a couple things. I mean, something that might be interesting is you come across a farmer says they need help, their cows have come up missing, and you go up and you show up at the farm, and
Mm-hmm.
there's the head of there's a like the head of a cow, but now it's stone. You're like, hey, what is this? You know, and then all of a sudden somebody else, you find a
Uh,
statue of a stone of a farmer that you met previously. Oh, there's a Medusa or something like that. So yeah, I think adding little nuggets that obviously explain what is going on, but
mm-hmm.
it takes a couple of them to really spell it out is what's going on.
Yeah, he also put in the chat there the base concept is similar to that of an escape room. Okay,
Yeah,
I got you. Okay,
yeah.
that is good. I've done an escape room about 3 times. I
I
love them
love
and
them.
I love them and I hate them because I
Oh,
am
I love
so
them.
stupid. I can't figure the. I can't, let me take that back because I have done. I know we're going down a rabbit hole, but I have done an escape room where I was able to figure out the more of the easier ones. It's the ones where you got to put the ones that have associations are the ones that drive me crazy. You know what I mean
Yeah,
by associations?
yeah, yeah,
You know, you have to kind of associate it with something that's just completely like nondescript in the room to figure it out.
yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah,
so
so kind of going back into our next topic, which
mhm,
is taking away player agency,
yes,
or taking control of a PC to railroad them. And my biggest thing right here,
mhm.
don't ever do that. The only
No,
time I think it's roughly acceptable is if they've been charmed,
yep,
right? Like if you're in the middle of a combat and a spell
hmm
has been cast that is visible to everybody, that these kinds of things have happened. If you're with a more immature audience or younger audience, definitely don't charm some like don't have a
right.
vampire charm somebody at a door that nobody knows, like that charms a player. You don't say anything out loud and you act and you basically take control of a player. I think taking player agency away breaks the game 100%.
Yep.
One of my own games actually last October the game ended because of this right here. The DM took the player agency away from one of the other players, and he ended up like pitting the players against each other, and it was
Oh,
yeah,
oh.
yeah. And what he said is, so he had the player asleep and he was sleepwalking, which is why the DM took control, and then took a knife to one of the other players. And it was actually to my character. And I woke up and I got a little bit upset with the person, but like afterwards I talked to the DM and I was like, hey, that is not okay. It's like you do
No,
not want to do that.
no, that is not okay. Now let me ask your opinion on this because I have done this with some players and they haven't gotten upset with me. So I think it's okay. But have you told the players just to kind of build immersion, like what their characters are feeling? Like, for example,
Yeah,
okay, you've done
yeah.
okay, so you kind of know where I'm going because I've done that a couple of times. I'm currently running Curse of Strahd, a D&D campaign,
Mm-hmm.
and my players, are still kind of relatively new to D&D, but they weren't really getting the horror of the scene. And so I explained to them that, you guys see this and you are scared out of your mind. You're terrified because they just weren't really getting it. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
so if you're with newer players that may so a lot of times newer players have that immersion problem where they can't connect. uh I would try, so when I do it, I do try to stay away from an exact feeling. I don't try to say you are scared.
Mm-hmm.
I do try to stay away from that just because I do think that starts to lean into that player agency.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely get it. And like when I play with my daughter and her friends, I will use that kind of language because I'm playing with 7, 8, 9 year olds.
Right.
So I would probably use that on much younger players, but for an adult that I'm playing with, instead of saying you feel scared, it could be, you see a creature looming just inside of a mist and the hair on the back of your neck stands up and everything in your body is telling you to turn and run.
Okay.
That may
That
be
makes
something
sense.
that I say instead of just outright saying you are scared.
I
Because
can
now
see
you're,
that. Hmm.
yeah, and so I would much prefer to try to describe that feeling a little bit. If
Hmm.
if I if I feel like if I say your body feels like it wants to run, a lot of people have had that moment where they've been in a situation where you are so scared that that's what you want to do. And I think that that's a better way to describe scared than
Hmm.
saying you're scared.
Yeah, I like that because what you're doing there is you're showing, you're not telling, which my creative writing teacher in high school always drilled into us. Show, don't tell. And I like the way you did it better. And I like your description there of your body wants to turn and run. Because you're right, we've all had that where um, I've been in
Yeah,
situations like that where I've gotten okay, the situation's getting kind of sketchy. I'm not quite
yeah,
sure, but my body's feeling like okay, we need to get out of here. But my mind logically is going, but this wait a minute, wait and see, before you decide whether you're going to, back out of the situation. Yeah, I'm looking at
yeah. Reading
Reaper's Reaper and Cheryl. So I insight.
Cheryl.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Cheryl is an author, so she's going to be a little bit better at telling us how to do some of this. Yeah, so she brought up a fantastic point, and I
Yeah.
really like it. Showing brings people into a scenario, so that aspect of
Yes.
your body wants you to run is bringing you in. Where saying you are scared, it kind of is a pushback. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. And perfect phrase for that exact feeling.
That's a great point.
But again, kind of going back into player agency, you just don't want to take it away because you have the entire world.
Hmm.
All they have is this one person that they get to
Right.
play with.
Yep.
If you start to take that away, you're taking the only connection that they have to the story and the game. You're taking a little bit of that away, and it doesn't take a lot for them to feel like they've lost everything.
So, Jeremy, what are some reasons why you think GMs would take control from the negative to because in my mind I'm already thinking about negative reasons why they do that, and I'm thinking about not really positive reasons, but maybe just inexperience on the part of the GM. So, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think some scenarios that I've seen it in is the one where he had him dream sleepwalking, and
Hmm.
it was because the DM was like, "This is what your character would do due to your background and your history. This is what you would do, and I'm going to do it to you because you're not going to role play that because you know how terrible this situation's about to be."
Hmm.
So I think DMs will sometimes take a character when they think that the player can't role play that scenario themselves.
Hmm.
Instead of the DM messaging the person saying, "Hey, I need you to do this." I think doing that
Gotcha.
as a DM would be okay. Saying,
Hmm.
"Hey, you've been affected by a spell, or due to your background, this is something you may do." As a DM, you want to get that information to the person and let them do it.
Yeah, absolutely. To give you an example, in my Curse of Strahd game, player characters, they're at an inn, and um, Strahd showed up. And anybody who's heard of Curse of Strahd knows that Strahd is a powerful vampire. His save DC on his charm ability is insanely high. Player characters are probably not going to save against it, especially if they're low levels. And he charmed the sorcerer in the group. And what I did, I mean, we play on Fantasy Grounds, which is a virtual tabletop, but we play in person because we like the automation. I like showing the maps, all of that,
Mm-hmm.
which is why we still use it. So we play in my upstairs room in my house, and so I took the player Tim and I brought him downstairs and I explained to him. I said, okay, I said, you have been charmed, and what that means is you now consider Strahd to be a friendly acquaintance. It's not like he's your best friend,
Yeah.
but you're going to take whatever he says or does in the best light possible. And I just explained that to him. We went back upstairs, and that's exactly how he played it. So I feel like I did not take his agency away from him. I just told him what the effect of the Strahd's charm was. Looking
So
here,
Reaper kind of going into talking about dream sequences and
mm,
meditation. Sometimes he'll take control. Uh, yeah, I mean those may be the few times where it's a little bit. I think the DM, as the DM, if you're narrating a scene, that can be acceptable, but if you're narrating the scene and you're narrating for the player, it can get a little wishy-washy. Again, if you're
yeah,
with a more novice, if you're with novice group who haven't played a lot, they don't know how to role play or say what they're wanting to do as well. And again, I think that that's a little bit more acceptable because you're DMing to your group.
mm-hmm.
Uh and that's going to be okay. And kind of like what I was saying, I'm DMing for my daughter and some of her
Mm-hmm.
friends, and they're so young that I have to do that in order for it to advance
Right.
because they just don't know yet. And I do think that that's okay, but you got to be so careful with taking away player agency or
Yep.
getting characters used to not having player agency. That's something you really want the players to have.
So I'm looking at what Reaper said about meditation instances. I could see that for a monk character in a D&D game. I've never done this, but it's given me ideas.
Yeah, yeah,
And they meditate, and maybe they're entering this trance-like state, and I would use that to give them information.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe it could be a homebrew monk class who can use that at higher levels to contact an outer plane, get in touch with an outer planar entity or god, whoever you want it to be, and that's their way of getting information from them. I think that would be cool because then you could narrate kind of a cutscene there.
yeah. And I this point in time in my DMing, I'm probably still going to let the players do what they want in a
Mm.
dreamlike realm. But I 100% in the past, and I think it's completely okay. Because in a dream, I think this is where some of the connection may be. In a dream, you don't expect to have player agency.
Right.
So I think the fact that you're not expecting to be able to control your dream, that
Mm-hmm.
that kind of scenario is okay. Now, if you were to, so if you put me in a dream and then I wake up and you say roll a save to see if you take psychic damage, then I'm going to be mad. If you
Yes.
describe a scenario and then tell me to
Mm-hmm.
roll a dice to see if I take psychic damage, I'm going to be mad because I didn't get any control in that dream.
Yep.
Now, if you gave me control and I took myself somewhere, then you could have me save to do psychic damage.
Yep. Agreed.
So I think that's a unique scenario that you could do. You could damage a player inside of a dream, but only if you let them control the dream.
Yeah, and this is a touchy subject. I mean, player agency, and this is something that if you think it's going to happen in the campaign, you better be setting this expectation during a session zero.
Yeah,
Just to
yeah,
set those expectations. Now, another way. Oh, I asked you a question a while ago about why do GMs do this, and I want to focus on novice GMs.
yeah,
Why they might do this. And this is because they haven't yet developed their improv skills.
yeah,
Because at a certain point, when you're GMing games, you're going to have to learn to take the leap and start improving. And that's scary. It is very scary. And I will tell you, in my Curse of Strahd game, I've been doing a lot of improv. And what DMs or GMs need to understand is that if you know the material, like if you're running an official campaign like I am with Curse of Strahd, or you're running Tomb of Annihilation or Storm King's Thunder, if you know the material and know the NPCs and know their motivations and you know how all these different things connect together, it is so much easier to improv. And I'll give credit to this in my work right now as a corporate trainer, because when you're facilitating training classes, you have to know the material, because if a discussion starts going down rabbit holes, you have to know how to bring it back and
Yeah.
still tie what they're saying into the main discussion. It's the same thing when you're running games.
I
You've
think
got to know the material.
I think as a kid, I once told the players like, no, you kneel in front of the king, and like it was stuff like that, and it was like
No,
they're
I
walking
don't.
in front of yeah exactly, and they're like, no, I would never. I am the proud son of and it's like,
Right,
dang it, I didn't realize that I did that, and like to me, you walk in front of the king, you kneel, but
right.
no, they're like, no, I'm going to give this king the finger, and it causes all kinds of problems.
I'm looking at Reaper's comment
Yeah.
here. So situations like that, I propose questions throughout it, like hovering before a large yellow eye as a voice rings within your mind, beckoning you to grasp the golden falchion, but at a
See
cost.
that
What would you like to
yeah,
do? Okay.
you're still giving them player agency
Yep.
in that scenario though. It's if you said you reach out, you grab this, and now take 1d10 damage.
Yep.
That would be taking player agency away, saying
Yes.
this is the vision you see, you grab it, you don't get a pig, you don't tell me, you grab
Right.
it, and now I'm going to damage you. That would be taking the player agency away.
Or here's another thing too, is that if you're narrating a dream or a meditation, I think it's okay to narrate the cutscene, but then
Yeah,
it shouldn't have any lasting effects when they come back into the quote real world, the
yeah,
real imaginary world of the game world. Because again, I think you can use that to give information to
yeah.
the player. So as long as it doesn't have any lasting effects, and I think it's okay to narrate in like what Reaper's saying, okay, you reach out and you grab this, and this is what happens. But as long as it just doesn't have any lasting or permanent effects when they come back to the real world, I think that's okay.
Yeah. Kind of going with these last two topics where we're talking about heavily scripted encounters and taking
Yep.
away player agency.
Yep.
I kind of wanted to dive into killing a player characters while they're not at the table.
Yep. Yeah, don't do
I'm
that. Don't do
I'm
that.
just gonna say if I was ever a player and I got a text message, hey, I know you couldn't make it this week and we played your character and it died.
You know
Don't
what?
don't do that.
Yeah.
That people will not come back to your game if you do that. Don't do
Now,
that.
so here's my rules for that, because I learned this one time when a player got upset because his player character died. He had a legitimate reason for missing the game. And so he and I talked about it, and he said, I really think you should retcon that. He's like, I just don't think it's fair because I missed a session, my character died. So what my house rule out of this is now, a character can still go down. Let me say this first. I don't like the idea I've seen some people do is like, well, the character just pops in and out of existence.
Yeah.
If the player's not there, I don't do that. Now, what I
Yeah, I don't
do
do that
is
either.
the player, I have another player play that character. If they want to role play that character, that's fine. They're not expected to do so. They can play him in combat because combat's, pretty straightforward. If the
Yeah.
player character can still go down, but I have them in the case of D&D 5e, I have them automatically make their saving throws, their death saving throws.
So I will typically skip a session. I will skip an entire session rather than play without a PC for this scenario. But if they can't make it and you're gonna play and you kill that character,
Yeah,
oh man, that is like the pinnacle of don't do that.
don't do
Don't
it.
do that.
Don't do it.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. If anybody tries to explain to me why it's okay, it's not. Don't do
No.
that. Don't kill somebody who's not even there to defend themselves.
So
That's bad.
So let me tell you a story that I just read on Reddit just this morning, and I
Oh
responded
gosh.
to the guy because not only was his character killed, but then he got blocked from the Discord server and from the Roll20 server they were playing on. Like completely got blocked. So nobody gave him any explanation for what happened. He had no other contact information for the group. He had just joined the group. I think he said that he played in like 2 sessions. And then his character
Mm,
died, and then he just got a message from the DM saying, "Hey, your character died." And next thing he knows, he's blocked from like I said, the Roll20 server from the Discord server. So that gets into another thing I want to bring up. The
Yeah.
biggest jerk DM that you can do is to ghost and block a player online without being
Yeah.
honest with them about what happened. If you don't want this player in your game anymore, be
Just
a
talk to them.
freaking adult and
Yeah.
tell them why.
Yeah. I think a lot of that's going to go back to a lot of the stuff that we talk about on the channel is always going to fall back into that communication
Yep.
category. And a lot of it's going to be going to come back to category. If you got to tell, and I booted my childhood friend. I have been friends with this guy since uh third grade. Me and him have been friends since third grade. And recently he got busy. He was skipping sessions, started doing stuff that just wasn't fun. We didn't like it. And I was like, hey man, like you got to take it. I was like, your life is getting really busy. You're missing sessions. You're doing stuff that just isn't fun. You gotta step away.
Yep.
If your life kind of changes and you feel like you can make the commitment and have fun with us again, let me know. I'd be more than happy to, talk with you and have you come back. But I had to kick out my best friend from one of my games, and I did it. I didn't
Yeah.
care.
I mean,
But
it happens.
man.
Just
Yeah.
absolutely just communicate. And then that Reddit post I was telling you about, somebody in a comment said that, get ready, you ready for this one? I love this one.
Yeah.
He wasn't the DM. He was a player. It was a brand new group playing online. They were all excited. They had their characters made. They're chatting in the Discord server. They're getting excited about the game. All of a sudden, it comes game time. DM doesn't show up. He didn't say how long they waited. He or she, you can't tell who it is on social media a lot of times. But they waited. They're on Discord. They're chatting with the other players. All of a sudden, the conversation ends. The Discord server gets deleted. The Roll20 server gets deleted. The DM just completely ghosted and blocked them. Like they're in the middle of a conversation waiting for the DM, and like nothing, and then nothing. They got cut off. Now, I will say this. Here's the thing, okay? What I'm thinking happened there is that DM got overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It was probably either one of their first games or their first online game. They got overwhelmed. They wasn't sure how to do it. They're non-confrontational, which don't even get me started on how many people I see online saying they're conflict averse. So one thing I was telling this group I was talking to online is, here's the deal, okay? Number one, as we talked about in a previous video, assume positive intent. Assume that they had not a malicious reason for doing it, but something happened and it stopped them from wanting to run the game. As we talked about, the fundamental attribution error. Don't blame it on their character. Don't think that this DM is a jerk because all of a sudden they delete the Discord server and the Roll20 server.
I would be pretty mad.
I would be mad too. But me, I'd be thinking, what the heck happened to this person?
Yeah.
That did they just get overwhelmed or did something happen? Now, the other thing I've been learning, because I'm going to facilitate a new course at work called Crucial Conversation, one of the concepts I learned from this is clarity brings psychological safety. And all that means is just be honest with people because that helps them feel safe. Even if they don't like what you have to tell them, they're going to respect you because you were honest with them and you were an adult.
Just talking about me having to kick out my best friend. I was the best man at his wedding last October. Literally, I think it happened a month before his wedding. I had to kick him out of our D&D group, and I was the best man at his wedding. So honestly, when I was talking to him, he said, "Hey, man, thanks for talking to me." He was like, "You're right. I don't have time. I'm stressed about trying to get time away to get to the game and what it's going to be like." He was like, it is affecting me. He was like, you're right. I'm not enjoying it. And I don't think we had a real conversation. Yeah. He 100% agreed. He's happier not playing for the moment. And our group is happier that he isn't stressing us out from missing and stuff like that.
Right.
Just communicate with people. It's going to be way better.
I don't get it, Jeremy. I don't understand this growing trend of conflict averse people I'm seeing.
I don't know. Maybe it'll get better, but with
I don't
stuff
know.
like this, maybe it'll get better.
Yeah.
Going into our next little topic though,
Yeah.
using cursed items to screw with players. I've seen this a lot. I've
Yeah.
seen this a lot.
Yep.
I will say I don't use cursed items. I There's been very few times. I have one player that loves to get cursed items and he role plays it so good every time. But for the most part, I'm just not going to use them because I think it's so touchy on what's going on. And that's just because you start getting cursed items and Reaper's kind of talking. There are a few cursed items that I feel like don't mess with the role play side and they just affect combat. And I may use them and stuff like that. But I feel like cursed items, it takes a lot of the trust and stuff away from
Yep.
the DM and the player. So there starts to be a lot of trust issues. There starts to be a lot of other issues uh
Oh.
from all kinds of stuff going on with cursed items, and especially if it like starts to change their alignment and other stuff like that, it
Yep.
starts to get really rough.
Hey, hang on 1 second for me, Jeremy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're fine.
Yep.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
and for the cursed items, and again, like I think like a shield of arrow catching could be fun as a DM, but as a player, I get that as a magical item and I'm really annoyed.
Yep. What happened to your camera there, boss? You're
I was just moving it for a second.
okay. Because it's like going up, you're starting to disappear.
I know. I
Yeah.
messed with it.
There
We
you
go.
go. There we go. I very rarely have ever used cursed items because the few times I did when I was younger, to your point, it just caused a whole bunch of problems in the party. I do like what Reaper's saying. Make it pretty obvious when an item is cursed and
Yeah.
allow them to be able to be cleansed. Which actually, that's actually not a bad idea because that could be a whole quest in itself. If you allow them to be, cleansed, somehow.
Yeah. And I do agree with that. I have it where things can be cleansed in the actual like D&D book and stuff like that. You're not
Hmm.
supposed to be able to permanently get rid of curses.
Right.
And I don't agree with that.
But doesn't the remove curse spell? I can't remember. Does that allow you to get rid of a cursed
No,
item? Not remove
no.
curse.
It allows you to take the item off. That's it.
Oh, okay. So you can take the item off and get rid of it, but it doesn't remove
Yeah.
the curse from the item. Right.
Mm-mm.
Gotcha. Okay. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
in
That's
in older editions you could permanently remove it, but in fifth edition, no, it does not permanently
okay.
remove it. It basically it because most cursed items you're not allowed to unattune to them,
Yep.
and remove curse basically just allows you to unattune and remove it.
Gotcha.
Uh, I think, and I have done this before, and I don't really consider it a cursed item, is talking to a character and say, like, hey, this is an item that I think would be really cool. Here's the drawbacks. Like, it does have drawbacks, but it's got
Hmm.
some cool stuff with it too. And talking to them with it and then letting them do it. Uh,
Yeah, I'm looking at Reaper's comment too.
yeah.
I also make the cleansing have to be by a church/priest/priestess of the right following.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And I've done that as well. Like, if again, I kind of like what Reaper's saying. I made an item obviously cursed, but they didn't attune to it. And I think that's kind of where what we're talking about is the cursed items to trick and screw the players
Yeah.
is the stuff that you want to avoid.
Yep.
If I'm a DM and I'm like, it's dripping green, you detect magic on it. It seems kind of odd. It's giving you weird magical vibes. I wouldn't put it on. If you give them a whole bunch of warnings and then you
Hmm.
put it on, they put it on, you're like, well, that was a cursed item, just so you know. I tried to make that obvious. I don't think that that's the screwing with the players. I'm still going to avoid cursed items for the most part, but yeah, I do agree with that. If you start throwing all these things out there and then they're like, oh, well, I think that's terrible. If you just like, oh, it looks like a pretty good magical ring. It looks like a
Hmm.
+1. And then
Hmm.
they put it on and it's like, now it changes your gender. Don't do that. You just took player agency away.
Yep.
Don't do that.
Yep.
Versus, you can tell that something's kind of off. Now all of a sudden you have this whole new quest line, right? Now we need to get this item that we know something is wrong with it and go fix the item so we can use the item. That to me is a really good storyline versus tricking the players into putting on cursed items and to get negatives.
Yep.
I don't like that.
Yeah, now you were giving me an idea there when you said you gave an example about they cast detect magic on an item. You was like, hey, it's dripping green. You cast detect magic on it. You're getting some weird vibes from it. I could see as a clue. I've never done this. I just had the idea. I could see as a clue to the player that they cast detect magic, but there just seems to be something. They can still tell what school of magic it is, but there just seems to be something off or corrupt.
Yeah.
Or instead of feeling like pure, there's something,
yeah, but giving
corrupt.
those word triggers and stuff like that is fun. Like all of a sudden they're
Right.
like, well, oh no. Now you could have the barbarian that's like, I put it on. All right. Well, I warned you. It sounded like it was bad.
Yep.
But that to me is very, very different than and again, if the ring does like really crazy stuff, I would don't introduce stuff like that. If it changes alignment, if it changes alignment based stuff, if it changes somebody to evil, talk with that player before you even get the item in the game.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because you cannot just tell a character you're evil now. This is a cursed item and you're evil. Don't do that because it's taking the player agency away. They don't have a choice in the matter. They didn't know that was going to happen, and don't do that. Don't do that.
Now that I'm thinking about it, Jeremy, a lot of what we've talked about here today really falls under that bucket of taking away player agency. 100%. If you look at our topics, I mean, all of them really fall into that. And I know this next topic here is one that you're pretty passionate about because you were pretty emphatic about it when we were prepping for this. About if you see the DM bullying players, speak up.
Yeah, 100%. If you see stuff going on, if a situation happens and you feel like one of the other players is feeling bad about it, if you see player agency being taken away from a player, stand up, say like, hey, yeah, exactly, Reaper. Everyone has a voice at the table.
Yep. Absolutely.
I do not enjoy watching that happen, and I'm not going to, especially as an experienced DM. If I see that happening, I may let the scene play out just so I can figure out what is actually happening. But if I'm getting red flags during that, again, I'm probably going to leave it alone at the table that day. But kind of like a couple episodes ago, a lot of times I'll give it. My groups typically play once a week. I will typically 3 to 4 days later message the DM. I typically try to keep everything in general unless it feels like it needs to be private, just so if I think there's a problem, I'm doing like, hey, this kind of felt like a problem. Can we all kind of talk about it? It looked like this was happening over here, or this is the way I felt. Now, if it was getting bad and you feel like somebody went home and cried or something like that, and I've seen that scenario play out too, private messages DM and been like, hey, don't do that again. Like that was basically abuse. If I see DMs using storytelling to abuse other people, I'm going to put a stop to that pretty quick.
Yep. I actually made a player cry one time, and it's not because I was a jerk DM. Well,
yeah.
She thought
you get that emotional scene. Oh man, I've made players cry.
It was She thought I was a jerk, but she jokingly thought I was a jerk because I had them go into the Feywild. This was a one shot, and it was this part of the Feywild was frozen. They came across an intelligent mastiff that I named Bruno, and the first thing this player told me, I remember her name was Hannah. It's the first thing she told me because she loved animals. She goes, Paul, if you kill this dog, I am not going to be happy. And so, they're like 3/4 of the way through the adventure. They're trying to get to the Ice Queen's palace. They get into a combat. Bruno dies. And she started bawling. And I felt so bad because I made her cry. And her boyfriend, Casey, was on with us. And he's like, Paul, don't worry about it. It's not a good game if you didn't make Hannah cry.
Dude, if you can
Just
get a player to cry due to emotional connection to the game,
yeah,
oh, that's such you're like,
yeah.
man, that's good. Now, if you
Mm,
make them cry because you're bullying them, that's what this entire episode was about. Don't do
yep. No,
that.
and
So,
absolutely. I mean, and this comes back into about people being non-confrontational, and I mean, folks, anybody watching, confrontation gets a bad, connotation, but confrontation doesn't have to be negative.
yeah.
Confrontation is nothing but you just speaking your opinion and relying on facts to back up your opinion. That's all it is. And if you see a DM bullying a player, speak up and say something.
Now, I have totally stolen a table from a DM due to this. I was just thinking about that. I had it where the DM was being kind of a tool to a couple of the players, and I eventually was like, "Hey guys, I'm gonna start a different game on this other night. Who wants to come play with me
Oh
as well?"
wow.
And then yeah, we basically started the new one. We played a couple more weeks with this other guy, and then people were like, "Yeah, we're done with this campaign. You're
Yeah,
you're
you're a
a
jerk.
butthead."
Yeah,
yeah.
you're
It
a
was
jerk.
basically like, "Yeah, I don't want to play."
Yeah,
Uh,
we're leaving. All right,
so,
so to kind of wrap this up because we've been at this for over an hour, Jeremy, on
yeah,
our longest stream yet.
yeah,
All right, playing favorites.
yeah.
I've never played favorites to my knowledge.
I
I've
have.
read so. Have you? Oh,
Oh
okay.
yeah,
Do
I
tell.
have.
Do tell.
All
Wait a
right.
minute. Wait a minute. Hang
So
on a second. Let me ask
yeah,
Reaper because I know he's one of your players.
yeah.
Reaper does
No,
does.
no. I'm a player with Reaper. I am not a DM
Oh,
for
okay. You
Reaper.
haven't
Yeah.
DM'd. Okay.
I have not DM'd Reaper. I'm just a
Okay.
player with him. Uh
Okay.
yo, thanks, Reaper. Yeah. I'll have to get you in one of my games at some point. Uh so okay. So I do play favorites, and I think I do it in a somewhat tasteful way. I say that because I definitely still do this as well. Uh,
Okay.
so I typically take a couple weeks, if not months, to write out my campaigns. So when my players and I try to get my players to make characters like way in advance to give me time. Uh, so like one of my players, and he does this every time. I try to write him into the story as best I can,
Mm-hmm.
but if he gives me I have amnesia.
What the heck are you supposed to do with that?
Yeah. I have made a fantastic campaign off of when he told me he had amnesia. But yeah, like one of my players, that's what he does. He's just like, my backstory is this 2 lines. I can't. I'll do what I can, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously you can't be too integral to all kinds of stuff. Where my other player, he will call me at lunchtime every Wednesday and Fridays, and he's like, let's discuss my character. Like, what's this? Can I do this? Can I add this to the lore? Can we do this? Obviously, the story is going to revolve around that. And again,
Okay.
I don't try to
Yeah.
make the main quest, but there's gonna be a lot of like side stuff that I can do with this player and more quest hooks because he has more. He's more real than the 2 lined fighter.
Yep.
So I do play favorites. I think this and again, I wanted to separate it. I think that's a little bit more acceptable uh than playing favorites where you're giving magical items and they all only work for a wizard and there's only
Right.
one wizard in the group.
Yep.
That's playing favorites. Giving you give 3 magical swords and you have one person who likes to use swords and other people like maces or a great sword or a maul. If you're giving one type of magical weapon just because it's the most common, don't that's not an excuse.
Yep.
Just give stuff that everybody can use.
Well, I will say this: what you were telling me just now, Jeremy, about you quote playing favorites. That's not playing favorites. That's just working with what the players are willing to give you. I
Yes and
mean,
no. It is still playing favorites because you're doing more work for one character, which I agree is
but they're
bad,
giving you
but
more
that's the point.
material.
Yeah, exactly.
They're
It's the
giving you more
player's fault,
material.
not
I
mine.
mean,
Yeah, it's their fault, not mine. Uh, but for it, playing favorites would be, the as a reward, everybody gets 10,000 gold, and you get 10,000 gold and a castle.
right?
Don't do that.
Yep. Do
You
you know
want
how
to keep
many?
rewards. pretty
You know how many
similar.
stories I have read online about DMs playing favorites with their spouses
Spouse.
or
Oh my
girlfriend or
gosh.
boyfriend? I have read
Yes.
so many of those. And
Yes.
yeah, it's not cool. Quickest way to lose players from your group is playing favorites with your significant other.
The worst I have seen hitting on multiple topics in our list would be I played in a game where there was a DMPC playing favorites with his girlfriend that was also a player. Oh, that
Wow.
was not
No.
like it was basically a third wheel campaign, right? Like there was two others of us playing. It was me and somebody else, and then the female and the DM with the DMPC. It
Mhm.
was what an awkward game, man. That was terrible. Don't do
So
that. Don't
so he was
don't do
playing favorites with his own DMPC and playing favorites with his girlfriend's player character.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, not
it
cool.
was bad.
Yeah, not
It was,
cool.
yeah.
Because all that's going to do is just build resentment on the part of your, of your other players, and that's just absolutely not cool. So, well, Jeremy, I think we made it through the list.
We did
Um,
it.
we did it. Even a lot of these tied in together. So I'm hoping for the folks who are watching that they, whether it's here or on YouTube, that they learn something to take to their own games. You want to tell us what we're going to be talking about next time in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, so next in 2 weeks, that's going to be April the 2nd. We're going to start same time, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Hmm.
And we're going to be talking about, let me look at it real quick. Did we put it in our notes?
It's in our notes. It's there.
Oh, no.
See, Jeremy, I teed you up,
Right. I
and
did.
now you're letting me down.
Oh, yeah, there we go. How to bring issues. I need to highlight it next time.
Yeah.
So next time we're going to be talking about how to bring issues to your DM. We
Yep.
talked a lot about a lot of that tonight, and in previous episodes, we're going to talk to you about some ways that we would go about it, stuff like that. If you guys do have any ideas, you can always feel free to shoot them to us on our Twitter. Paul
Yep.
dropped the link to it earlier on. You can find it as well on Twitch stream and YouTube. You can also leave a comment in YouTube, say, hey, you guys should talk about this, or hey, I really like this. And drop us stories too if you guys want to. We would love to hear stories that revolved around anything that we talked about in this episode.
Yep.
It'd be fantastic. We'll try to, if you do, we'll try to bring them up in the next episode. It'd be really, really fun.
And Jeremy, we would absolutely be remiss if we did not, and maybe Jeremy's too humble to bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up. If you look at the background image, you might notice we have a new background image. Believe it or not, Jeremy made this image of the Dragon in the Mountains in Inkarnate, which is his map making program of choice. And as we talked about in previous episodes, that Jeremy is a freelance artist and map maker. The fact that he made a dragon using map making software is amazing, but I also want to point out that the image behind me is the symbol of that's Torm, right?
Torm.
Torm
Yep.
from the Forgotten Realms.
Yep.
And did you make that in Inkarnate as well, or what did you make that in?
I did.
That's
I
insane.
shouldn't have, but I did.
Yeah. And then the image behind you, Jeremy, is
Yeah.
which one of your maps is that?
So this is just a mountain pass. It's a dirt road kind of in the valley of some mountains that I made.
Yep. So in the YouTube recording of this, once we get it on YouTube, there's going to be links to two of the Patreons that Jeremy is a part of, which is Beg, Borrow, and Steal Productions, and then CZ Maps. Did I get that one right?
CZRPG.
See, that's right, CZRPG. That's right, because you make the maps for their
Yeah,
adventure.
yeah, I'm the mapper. Yeah.
They're the mapper. So there we go. So we'll have links in the YouTube show description. So folks, please check out both of these Patreons. On another YouTube channel I had, the Digital Map Makers Academy. As I talked about it, how I originally met Jeremy. I met him and the three other artists that he works with at Big Bar and Steel Productions. I interviewed them. And one of the things I said about their maps, for all four of them, these are not just maps. Guys, really, these are works of art. So please go check out their Patreon and help support Jeremy and his fellow artists.
Yeah, Cheryl's in the chat too. Thank you.
Yep.
Cheryl.
And yeah, Cheryl's one of the artists. So there you go. Woohoo! BBSP. There you go. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching this stream. I know it was a long one. When I get this up on YouTube, I am going to divide it into chapters. I will watch the entire video again and divide it into chapters to make it easier to find all the different topics. But Jeremy, as always, it was good to talk to you.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was fun. And we will talk again soon. So
Yep.
everybody take care. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening.
All right. Bye-bye.